This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it's time for The Rant with Barbara Rose Brooker. So what are we going to rant about today, Barbara?
Oh my God, are we going to rant today, listeners? Age is not a number. And our guest, Elise Collins, who's fabulous, she's in her 50s. Her book, Super Ager, you've got to read. I love that title, Super Ager. And age is not a number. The thing is, let me just say before I address Elise with some questions, age, we talk about age and ageism like it's some kind of virus or disability or thing. And the thing is, it's not. It's God's work. It's living. It's a gift every day we have age and we tick forward. It's a wonderful thing. And I'm so tired of hearing about age and ageism. You can have 10 40-year-olds in one room and each one will feel differently about life, herself, age. So age is not a number. Elise, what do you think age is sociologically, intellectually, psychologically? Why? You're an expert in it. You have a master's in it. You've written about it. You're living it in your 50s. You teach yoga. What does it mean to you?
Oh, it's such an interesting question. I could just keep going for the next hour, but I'll try to keep it brief. I'll give you a couple tidbits. One is that we actually begin aging in utero. I always like to remind people of that because how you age is affected by your childhood, your time in utero. We know that from epigenetics. But I also want to remind you, if you're like, oh my God, I had a terrible, childhood, I had trauma, you can change that. We know that you can change that through yoga, through meditation, through many holistic modalities and ways. A lot of us that are older are very much involved in doing holistic things to heal the past. When I was born in the 60s, there was still segregation. There was so many things that would not be acceptable now. We're taking down statues, which we should, but we also have to heal those things within us as well. So I think age is seeing a lot of change. Time on earth, time in our incarnate bodies is something I think incredible. When you look at a centenarian, what they've lived through, the history they can tell you. I've always loved sitting down with older adults, my grandparents, and hearing stories of how things were in the past and how they've changed. I've always been amazed by that. That's what I think age is. I can just keep going.
It's interesting what you're talking about is you are talking about the inner lives we all have as we go through life. And yet our media and, TV, print, internet, books are all seem to be, and I'm speaking generally, of course, concentrating on age. They're equating age with appearance. And they're constantly lecturing. As an 84-year-old woman, I've lived through decades of ageism, but they're constantly lecturing how we should look, how we should dress, how we should act, how we should be. And what I hear mostly is an inherent age racism, a negative attitude towards age. And I think your generation, and Karen's younger too than I am, but I like to think that we're intersecting now generations with how we feel about age, how we celebrate ourselves with age. Do you see amongst your generation women in their 50s and 40s and 30s, do you see this intersection coming, this more celebratory attitude towards age and against our anti-age culture?
Yeah, I can speak to a couple things. Three things. One is yes, I do. Part of it, I think, is the internet, and we have so much information.
Sure.
Another is life expectancy has dramatically upticked. So we have, as you get older, as you all know, there's more variation rather than less. We become more diverse as we age. So there's so many women aging, and women are living longer than men, as we know.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we have so many great examples. I was blessed to have my grandmother who lived to be 95, and other older adults in my life when I was younger. I kind of took it for granted, but I realize now, like, some generations didn't have that or didn't have examples. So that made aging more appealing to me. But, I was stuck with the ideas from the media, and just a lot of negativity about aging. The other thing I want to point out, yeah, the other thing I want to say is globally, there's very different, globally and in different time periods, aging was thought of as very different. So I think that there's women around the world that I've seen actually through YouTube, because I haven't traveled to these places, but one is Wang Od Age. I may be pronouncing it incorrectly, but if you look her up, she's 103, I believe. I think she's one of the most beautiful women in the world, in my opinion.
Isn't that amazing to live that long too?
And she doesn't have preconceived notions about her appearance because she lives in the Philippines. She's a traditional tattoo artist. So you just watch her videos and it's like she's gorgeous. She was celebrated in her country, and she had a date with like one of the Filipino movie stars, and she was like a little kid. She was all like, oh, I'm gonna meet Coco Martin.
I love that. That's such a good example, and I'm sure she's not running for Botox and fillers every second.
Oh,
Which,
no.
which in our culture, I feel, I'm like I've said before on the show, I feel I'm not against product. I'm not against beauty, though I think beauty is how you feel about yourself. I'm not against any of those things, but I really am against the message that so many young women are getting, that unless I look this way, and if I don't have a line here and the jowl here, I won't get the job, I won't get the man, I won't get the this. This is a sad message that we have in our culture. So yeah, that's a very interesting example of someone who's lucky enough to live to 103. But do you feel also that so many women who say aren't fortunate enough, maybe they have physiological, or they're incubated into what we call nursing homes and things like that. I hate all those labels, by the way. They can still, the mind and the spirit, you teach yoga. So the mind and the spirit is also, is it not infinitely young? And does it not have infinite possibilities? Can you tell me how yoga can approach age for all ages?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yoga for all ages. I do teach a lot of older adults. I say and I teach people from babies from 0 to 100. I think that yoga brings us together. One of my favorite things to do is teach intergenerational yoga. I've taught 4 generations of family members. So there's a baby, there's a mother, there's a grandmother, and a great grandmother. And there's not that many activities in our Western modern culture where everybody participates. Eating, maybe a holiday. I mean, sometimes we'll watch a movie together, but I think yoga is something very deep. So I've taught it at anniversaries, wedding anniversaries, reunions, where people of all ages can partake. And I just give each generation or each ability, because sometimes there are young people that maybe have an ability. So yoga is not about your body. That's why I think it keeps your spirit young. It keeps you remembering that formless part of yourself. I'm just going to call it formless, because the form is what I think we're stuck on in Western culture. We're just our bodies. We're this thing. And then when that goes away, we're nothing, which is not anything that I believe. But I just want to introduce that for people, because I think as you get older, you start to care less about your form. You're just like, I'm having a great time. I don't care what I look like.
Well, I love what you're saying about the yoga, because that is addressing that families at different ages can be one person, can share. And that's what I'm hoping for after I leave the planet. You girls have to carry this on. That there is going to be an integration of all ages, work-wise, sociologically wise, and there won't be that age segregation that exists, And so I think what you're saying is very important. And also that at 58, you told me you're 58, and that you just recently graduated with a master's degree in, what is your master's degree in?
I have a Master of Arts in Gerontology.
Which I think is, first of all, congratulations that you went after 50 back to school. Yay. Because you can be I know people in their 80s who are now getting extra degrees online. Yeah. And I just think it's marvelous. And Karen, you're nodding your head too. How do you feel about this intersection with age?
There's a couple things I'm thinking of. Number one, I remember being told when I was in my 20s, okay, there will come a day, honey, when you get older that you won't go sleeveless because your arms are not tight and whatever.
Right.
And you know what? I don't really care for the look of the flab under my arm, but I like the style. So I don't care that I'm not supposed to be wearing it. I will wear it. I believe that we have to come together. I think that, as we age, we have such wisdom that we don't even tap on. But if the younger generation would tap on our wisdom, we would be a much better place. And they could see that we aren't one step away from the grave.
That's interesting. May I respectfully not disagree, but say that I'm not sure because I'm 84 that I have wisdom. What I do have is experience.
Okay, I will give you that.
Yeah. I'll say that. And also, I know people, I have friends in their 20s who are good girly friends. We don't think about the age, who have more wisdom in a lot of areas than I do. So I think that's a good point, the experience with the wisdom. And our guest, Elise, who specializes in gerontology, I would like to know, to tell you the truth, Elise, I've always hated the term geriatrics, gerontology, age appropriate, those things. What does gerontology mean? What is the age group of gerontology?
Yeah, well, gerontology is actually the study of aging. So to study aging, what I found out, I was already interested in aging. I wrote the book Super Ager, and then that's how I got into gerontology. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but I was a little wary. Like, for example, I taught kids yoga, and I thought, well, if I'm going into gerontology, do I have to give up kids yoga? Do I? But then I found out that actually that's the best time to affect the aging process, by teaching children. And I also learned, and it was something instinctually that I knew when I taught kids yoga, I would see these parents bringing their kids to class and saying, is this, is this going to be age appropriate? Is this too babyish for my child? And it kind of made me cringe, because yoga is about union with your inner self, as you're speaking to. So I was like, why are these parents so concerned with where their kids are on the aging hierarchy, quite literally? And I always tried to have, as my first teacher, way back, I've been teaching yoga for 20 years, actually. And one of the first teachers I had this beautiful example of this class, because back in the day, like 20 years ago, there was about like 3 kids yoga classes for every big metropolis in the US. So she had one of them in Oakland, California. And so she had to have 5-year-olds with 13-year-olds. So she had the older kids become mentors. So I've always adopted that, like show, just like we could do with our different generations in the workplace, have the older kids, show the younger kids how to do poses. The little kids look up to the 13-year-olds. And so we all work together. So early on, I didn't know what it meant, but we have a term in gerontology called age gradation, which means you're supposed to be doing certain things at certain times in your life. It's not true, but there's societal age gradation. So I saw that in the kids, and I always wanted to get rid of it. I didn't know why, but I just wanted to get rid of it. So part of my mission is to get rid of that age gradation where we think,
Yes.
I think it's also outdated. Why do we need to do something at a certain age?
Exactly. Elise, do you, during the COVID, since this has changed everything, are you teaching yoga on Zoom?
I am. I teach yoga on Zoom. I teach with older adults that are in senior communities. I teach all ages. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. So how can the listeners find you? I've always wanted to take yoga for my inner life.
You can do that.
But I have to start baby steps. So how do people find you?
So I am on social media, Elise Marie Collins Yoga on Instagram. I'm also EliseMarieCollins.com. And I have tips, if you want the tips for super agers. If you do Elise Marie Collins, my full name, .com//tips, I'll send you my schedule and 10 tips to super age.
That's wonderful. I love the title Super Age.
Marie, can I ask you a question about yoga?
Yeah.
I went to 2 yoga classes. That's all I've done, okay? And at both, I won't say I was reprimanded, but I felt uncomfortable because there were certain poses that my body just is either not ready to get into or may never get into. Mm-hmm. And I had the instructor tell me I should go home and practice before I return.
Oh.
When was this?
Within the last 2 years.
Not good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. I think there's a big movement amongst yoga teachers and yoga practitioners, yoga for everybody, but not everyone has the training, or there's a lot. I could go on and on, but there's been, from when I started yoga, there was hardly any training, and then there was just this explosion where there's kind of a joke. I think The Onion did an article, something like 1 out of 5 women is a yoga teacher, are yoga teachers. And so not all are really trained or understanding. They're just maybe doing a physical practice. So I'm sorry about that, but there's a lot more to yoga. And I can't speak for that teacher, but
absolutely.
Describing is what I'm a little afraid of, because I'm klutzy, and I'm afraid to go into a yoga class and not be able to do it. I think yoga has become so magical, so big, so important that we haven't quite domesticated it yet. We need to go to someone to feel comfortable. Like, I think Elise would make me feel comfortable. And it depends what stage, I guess, of class you're teaching too. I mean, do you have like beginners?
For me, I mostly teach gentle and restorative yoga. I think that's what I'm best at. And because it also is, it gets away from that ability idea that, oh, it's a goal to do a certain pose. And something interesting that I found when I was doing public classes was, and especially doing the gentle and restorative yoga, you're basically relaxing on pillows. That's a a little shortened version of what it is, but you're learning to relax. It's not meditation, but you're learning to relax and do barely anything. One of my students called it do nothing yoga. But what I found was before everything got shut down in March was in the last couple of years, there was so many younger people doing the restorative yoga and the do nothing yoga because their lives were accelerating so much that I think they needed to do nothing. And I even find with, for example, my parents' generation in their 80s and 90s, they don't want to do meditation. You know, they had a slower pace to begin with. Maybe they need to just stretch and move their bodies. And I just got this funny feedback from a class that I teach in a senior community online that Elise doesn't waste her time doing meditation. She just teaches us to relax and breathe. And that's so funny because I love meditation. But I realize, you know, in a half an hour class, especially if you're an older adult, you're not going to want to sit there and meditate. You want to stretch and move and do some things in a chair.
That's so interesting because when you say older adult, may I ask, I'm just curious, what age range would you say, and would you teach? And the other question is, how about the immobilized person who for various reasons is you know on a walker in a wheelchair? Can they also do mind and spirit yoga?
Oh, definitely. Well, there's a lot of examples. I mean, the classes I'm teaching, chair yoga. When I say older, I just like to use those words rather than some of the other words that are used to describe. I try to be specific. I don't know their ages, but I know they're living in a community that I think is for older adults. I haven't really investigated, so I'm calling them older adults because it's a specific community for this age group. I'm contracting out with somebody,
Right.
but
Six.
yeah. And yeah, so I just say older adults because I don't like some of the other words, and I don't think we have, you know, we can talk about the words used, but that's the words I use. I think like maybe over 65, but I had a joke with my mom though when if you can remember back to when we barely knew what COVID-19 was,
Right.
my mom and I were talking tonight. Nobody knew that much about it, honestly. And I was like, Mom, I heard that, I read in the paper that the elderly are more at risk. And my mom is 90. And she's like, the elderly, who are they?
Oh,
I
good.
love it.
Good. Oh, I love that.
So that's kind of my attitude. And I think that's her attitude. And that's the internalized, like, who are those people? I don't know.
Well, you just said it's so important, and Karen and I have talked about this many times on the show. The labels that segregate people. I really resent, you know, the labels. Older, elder. I don't really like being called an elder. I always say I'm not an elder. I'm a person. And well, how old are you? 84. Well, that's an elder. And I said, no, I don't really like the labels. I don't like the label senior. I don't like the labels cougar. And I've said this before, I don't like the labels age appropriate. I say be age inappropriate. You know, be who you are. Age is who you are. It's not a number. And it's too bad that our culture has so many labels, and not that I'm comparing ageism to the horrors and atrocities of racism and police brutality. I don't even get me started there, but there is a lot of sociological brutality to age. And I've seen people who are marginalized and depressed and feel invisible because of their age segregation. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, what I would say the intersection is we know from research on ageism and racism, ageism, it gets under your skin. The way people treat you, if the environment surrounding you is hostile to you, that gets under your skin. And we know that now. I think it's sometimes it's hard for people to accept because they don't read. I just went to graduate school, so I read a lot of research and I read about it, but it gets under your skin and it affects 7 years. Ageism can decrease your life expectancy by 7 years. If you want to know more, email me, elisemariecollins@gmail.com, and I'll give you the exact studies because
I'm interested.
my professor wrote, yeah, Paul Nash wrote the World Health Organization literature on ageism, and he was my professor. So we had to study a lot of different.
Well,
how ageism gets under your skin.
Under your skin. So you're talking about the internalization that
Exactly.
we feel even when we're young. I mean, I have to admit, I'm going to be very candid on this. I'm saying I don't really think about age when I do anything, but yet in certain situations, I get that feeling, am I going to be excluded? Kind of like you would feel in grammar school when you weren't in the cool group. You know, that kind of feeling, the exclusion, which, by the way, exists among activist groups, age activist groups. And I know, I've told Karen this, I've tried to join some of them, and I get the, well, you know, we kind of just go to 60, or we just kind of go to 70. They shouldn't kind of go to any age.
They only go to 70?
Yes, some. No, I'm only speaking some. But it's the same thing. It's the segregation and the exclusion. So when you talked about the, what is it, degradation,
age gradation.
Oh yes, that has to go.
Yeah.
I'm speaking generally, of course. I don't know.
I think if I think about my grandparents' generation, okay, they didn't live as long as our parents' generation and as long as we're living.
Right.
And my grandparents, they didn't mind being old because back in the day, you respected the older generation. So to them, it was a great thing to be older so that you would look up to them. But something happened between my grandparents' generation, my parents, and myself, where we're saying, I don't want to be known as old. I want to be known as Karen. I want to be known as the things that I'm good at, and let me live my life.
Yes.
My grandparents, just settled into a life, and not that my grandparents sat on a throne, but to some degree, when you walked into grandma and grandpa's house, you were respectful. You made sure you gave them a kiss and hug hello. You made sure that you didn't use any bad words. I mean, generations have changed us.
Karen, may I ask, in all the time we've known each other,
Yes.
How old are you?
I turned 70 last March.
That's right, you said 70.
Yep.
You're a baby. But it's true, there are certain demarcations of that, because I've told the story many times, and Elise, when I went back to school, to college as a single mother, I was like 34 or something like that. And I had to wear, you've heard me say this, Karen, a Velcro name tag that was printed "Reentry Woman." And the ageism was, I published my first novel at 50, and I, at 60, I was told to take a cruise and find a new husband. That the world of publishing and the world I wanted to be in and work for was closed to people my age, and thank God I pursued because, but I mean, I don't think it's as bad right now as, well, yes, it is. I'm not going to pretend because I'm on air. I think it's bad. And that's why, listeners, we are having the first virtual Age March in history. It's Age March, Age Magnificently, M. And it's to age, to promote a generation of positive aging, the awareness of positive aging at all ages, and it's going to be fabulous. And I have big news, which I can't announce today for various reasons, but we got a world national sponsor. We are now in the process of finding the national celebrity face of age. So it was Karen. I was on her show, and I've given age marches since 2010, but I couldn't get arrested all these years with the age march. You know, no, I had 200-300 people show up, but it was very hard. My last one was 2018. And I said to Karen on the show, we were talking about it. She said, why don't we have a virtual age march? So we are going to be having the first virtual age march in history, which will be global. You'll all be on it. So please go to agemarch.org and join.
Absolutely.
Sign up. We have over 2,000 so far of people who are joining from around the world, men and women of all ages. Of course, the first virtual age march will probably just have 100 or maybe a little more on it. But it's going to be major start because of the sponsor. So please tell everybody to join, because this is a movement. This is not a show. It's not a TED Talk. It's not a book. It's a movement, just like we've had the women's movement. So I do think, and do you think, Elise and Karen, do you think from your viewpoint of 70 and 58 that there is more of an intersection of blending of ages, particularly women in the workplace?
I think there's a little of both. And you mentioned earlier, Barbara, how sometimes you go to certain situations or places where you feel that I can't remember what I heard you say, but it was feeling like you're in high school and you're going to be excluded. I think we all can relate to that. And so many people have come to me as a coach and an aging advocate and a yoga teacher with those kind of experiences. And what I tell them is, are these people you really want to hang out with anyway? Because I'm actually not interested. I find people that aren't interested in all ages, they're not interesting to me. If they're thinking how great they are because they're young, it's like, I wasn't like that when I was younger. I mean, maybe I would sometimes take it on because I thought, oh, sometimes we're ignorant. I was ignorant, but I still had an uncomfortable feeling. And now when I see a situation like that, it's a party or it's an event where it's very specifically, I mean, sometimes kids like my son will just, no, mom, go away. I understand that. You want some space from your mom. I get it. But every time an older woman walks in the room, I'm not a mom figure all the time. Yeah. We got to get over that.
Yes,
and yeah. So I don't want to be in those spaces.
No, I don't either. But yet I do find in the work area, yeah. I recently applied, and I've talked about this, not recently, a year ago, for a online editorial magazine job that I more than qualified for, maybe overqualified, and they were real excited on the phone. But when I arrived, the 20-something girl with the beautiful blue hair and all of that, I mean, she, oh, we tried to text you. Do you have text? Yes. Well, we tried to text you. we just filled the job just when you were on your way. And it was blatant ageism. Blatant. That happens a lot, not just to me, but to people, to women I've heard in their 50s as well. So we are a culture, I think. This is a movement, at least we're talking about it. This is a movement that I predict is on its way to change. I envision a generation to come where it won't even be discussed, as I hope that the same thing will happen with racism, where people will be people and work will be available for every race, every age, every gender, every community. So this is kind of up,
Well, and it's, Barbara, it's up to us as women, okay,
Yes.
as people, to break that barrier. I mean,
Yes.
I've had a lot of trouble since I left corporate America, getting back into corporate America. So of course I started my own business, but I also have a weekend job, and I work with 20 somethings, and they treat me as if I'm one of theirs.
Yes.
And it's the way I walk in there. You know, I don't come in being the one who has all this experience or running my own business. It's, this is my job. This is what I'm good at when I'm with you. Let's work together.
And you're proud of yourself.
I love it. You
Yeah.
know, I've been off since COVID. Okay, we're going back October 1st, and these young people, and I still call them young because they're younger than my two older sons. They're contacting me. They're so excited I'm coming back because I bring a different type of vitality. So it's up to us to change the world right now.
I like what you're saying. It is up to us, and it's up to women like Elise Marie Collins. You have a very positive, effervescent attitude, and I know we talk to each other cold on the phone, and you were always so positive about this subject. So it is up to us.
Yes,
Is there anything else you'd like to say before we stop?
Yeah, what I would like to say to everyone, it's real. All of the external environmental forces, we'll call them, of ageism, of age gradation. And what I try to do as someone who's an advocate for super aging, I can show you my book, Super Aging. Super
Yes.
aging to me is having your own internal agency. That's what we learn in gerontology school. I didn't even finish that question, but you learn about the life course. You wanna be the driver of your life course.
That's wonderful.
To me, it takes a lot of internal work. Every day I get up and I have a practice so that I prepare myself. It's not that I rolled out of bed super positive. I am doing this intentionally. So if you're going to write me off as like, she's the positive, bubbly one, no, I work very intentionally.
I know that. I know.
Yeah, I'm not saying that to anybody because sometimes people go, oh, she's so happy. I am happy. I work to do
Yes,
that.
that's a very good point, because in all my wow, woo, woo age, it's been a long journey, and I have days where, of course, and then listen, I'm 84 and I'm still on therapy, even though it's on Zoom, because the inner life doesn't age, and it has so much to give and learn, past, present, future, because I believe in the infinite journey. So yes, I hear what you're saying, and I love what you're saying, and I love Super Ager, and it can be bought on Amazon, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you can get it anywhere. You can order it from a local bookstore, Amazon. Yeah, and if you want tips, I can send you 10 tips for free. It's a little PDF, Super Agers, 10 tips on super aging.
Oh, really wonderful.
Yeah.
I like that.
You
Yes.
can email me, Elise Marie Collins, my name at Gmail, or it's on my website, elisemariecollins.com/tips. And also I can tell you if you want to do yoga classes, they're open to all ages and abilities.
I think it's wonderful, Elise, and I sense you have so much to say regarding this subject that we just touched the tip of it. And I thank you so much for conversing and listening to my rant. And Karen, I always thank and love for allowing me a rant every week.
I love ranting with you.
And for everybody, please go to agemarch.org. And for those of you, my latest novel came out right before the COVID in February 2020, Love Sometimes. It's about ageism in Hollywood. And it's a very controversial love story. It's also a sequel. Thank you, Elise. Thank
Great
you.
book.
Also a sequel to the Viagra Diaries, which is still in development for a TV series, if that ever happens, but it still is in development. And that can be found on Amazon or any bookstore. But I thank you, Karen and Elise, and I send you my love, and to all the listeners, age magnificently.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go to YouTube and hear all this, see all this.